I still remember the day I joined the army, just out of college, filled with excitement to serve my country. The structure of the military seemed like the perfect match for me, and over time I found meaning in my work. But with every deployment, more of my personal life was left behind. After almost 30 years of service, I finally retired. Emily and I had weathered many storms together, raising our kids amid the chaos. Though I thought our relationship was solid, adjusting to civilian life was harder than I had anticipated, and we began to grow apart. The signs were subtle, and I failed to notice them. We had fallen into a comfortable routine, but I came to realize that trust is more delicate than I had imagined. We lived in a quiet cul-de-sac, surrounded by modest homes. At our first block party, Emily and I, now empty nesters, met the neighbors. Our son, Ryan, was away at college, and our daughter, Julia, had enlisted in the Navy. A decision that didn't sit well with me as a retired Army colonel. At the party, Emily ended up talking to David, a neighbor across the street, and she clearly wasn't enjoying the conversation. She tried to signal for me to step in, but I was deep in conversation with Sarah, a fit single mom. When Emily's look became more urgent, I finally went over to her, bringing Sarah with me to talk to David. While I freed Emily, I could tell she wasn't pleased with how long it had taken me. As we were leaving, we exchanged awkward nods with the Carters, a young couple who shared a strange, almost secretive look. My years of experience made me suspicious, but I followed Emily, hoping to reconnect before she left for her trip. Years of military life had put a strain on our marriage. We had come close to divorcing during one of my career assignments, but somehow we found our way back to each other. Still, I sensed something had changed during that rough period. Infidelity is sadly common in military marriages, though it's not something people like to talk about. Emily and I had been lucky to stay together, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she might have been unfaithful while I was away. How did I know? A tip from my ex-girlfriend, who managed a hotel near Emily's work, about seeing Emily at the Red Roof Inn raised some questions. I even hired a private investigator, but it turned out Emily's hospital was under renovation, and she'd been parking there for convenience. Still, her punctuality at work changed when I returned home, leaving me unsure of what to believe. My deployment in Korea was hard on our family. A year apart created a gap that I couldn't bridge, and the strain made me realize our marriage wasn't as invincible as I once thought. Although I never found out who the other man was, Emily seemed determined to make things right, just as I was. I eventually gave up my passion for flying and moved into Army intelligence to reduce the risks. Despite several deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan after September 11th, this new position gave Emily some peace of mind. However, I still worried about the state of our marriage, and I chose to retire rather than chase a higher rank, knowing that another deployment might be the final straw. In retirement, my consulting work paid better than staying in the Army, and I was able to be present for my kids' graduations with Emily by my side, which was priceless. Emily, meanwhile, continued her nursing studies and eventually became the lead nurse on a brain surgery team. She worked closely with Dr. Max Green, a talented and confident surgeon, and I began to notice the way he looked at her. Her compliments toward him only made me feel more uneasy. When I voiced my concerns, Emily admitted that flirting at work was a way to relieve stress, but reassured me that it hadn't gone beyond that. She reminded me of my own close working relationship with a CIA colleague, Ava, before I deployed to Iraq. Though Ava had shown interest in me, I had to trust Emily as she had trusted me with my work situation. Our conversation didn't go well, and it continued to linger between us. The truth, however, was that Emily had every reason to be suspicious. After an ambush in Iraq, Ava made a move on me, and in a weak moment I almost gave in. We were interrupted before anything could happen, and I convinced myself that it evened the score for whatever might have happened with Emily in Korea. But deep down, I knew I was only deceiving myself. Now, Emily and her team were headed to South America for a 6-week stint with Doctors Without Borders. I wasn't thrilled about her being there with Dr. Max, but I didn't want to hold her back after all the support she'd given me during my career. "I've stayed home for you plenty of times," she said. "Now it's your turn to wait for me." What could I even say to that? Things were tense when she left for the airport. She spent the night packing and talking to her mom, and we had little time together. I didn't want to argue, so I let it slide. The next morning, she was gone, no goodbye, no note. I checked my phone for messages, but there was nothing. I was frustrated, and part of me was worried. After calming down with a cup of coffee, I tracked her flight to Colombia, hoping she would reach out once she landed. But she didn't. I sent a quick message. I hope you're okay. Nice way to leave. No reply. Not that day and not the next. Running usually helped me clear my head, but my frustration pushed me to run faster. As I neared our cul-de-sac, I was gasping for breath when Howard Carter, who lived behind us, called out. "Nice view, huh?" He joked, noticing what I was staring at. I shrugged it off, telling him I needed to shower. He invited me over, even without Emily suggesting it, offering steaks and drinks. His wife, Olivia, smiled, and her subtle gestures only added to the strange feeling I had. I took the long way home, still distracted by Emily's silence. After a shower, I sat alone in our empty house, waiting for a call that never came. By nightfall, I decided to call her hotel. I knew her room number and itinerary, but no one answered. The hotel manager, Carlos Rodriguez, confirmed that she had checked in, but he seemed unusually guarded. He promised to check on her and have her call me, but something felt off. I reached out to Emily's close colleague, Sophia Washington, hoping she might know something. Just then, my phone rang. It was Carlos, not Emily, calling from Bogota. I answered the phone, my voice tight with frustration. "Hello, Carlos. Do you have any news on my wife?" There was a pause before Carlos's voice came through, sounding less professional than usual. "Señores, she's not in her room. Maybe she's with some other ladies. She's out." His words hit me like a punch. "You're being uncooperative here, Carlos. Can you help me out with something?" His tone shifted again, colder now. "Yes, señores. What is it you need?" "What's Dr. Max Green's room number?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. 514, he replied. I felt my irritation bubbling. "Carlos, do you plan on calling him? Because I'm not done yet." "Not yet," I replied. "One more thing. Check the room for Mrs. Sophia Washington." There was a slight delay on the other end before he reluctantly agreed, and I was left holding the line. Minutes passed. Finally, I heard Sophia's voice on the other side. "Hi, Sophia," I said, trying to sound casual, though my nerves were fraying. "I'm sorry to bug you, but can you tell me where my wife is?" Her tone shifted to one of annoyance. "Why do you ask?" she snapped. "Don't play games with me, Jack. Just tell me the truth." "Emily's room is next to Jake's, and she's not there." Sophia hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable. "Why don't you ask your wife, Jack?" she shot back. "You should really talk to her." I overheard a man asking, "Who's that?" "Maybe I should tell your husband about the guy in your room?" I replied, frustration edging into my voice. Sophia sighed, clearly uncomfortable. "I have his number, Jack. Don't call my husband. Tell me where my wife is, Sophia," I said, my voice lowering to something almost threatening. "Or I'll call him right now." After a long pause, she relented, transferring me to Jake's room. The phone rang, and I heard Jake's voice answer, clearly expecting to speak to Sophia. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice icy. "But this is Jack Miller. I need to speak to my wife." There was a moment of silence. Jake hesitated, then pretended to be confused. "Why are you asking me? If you value your hands, put Emily on the phone right now." A few moments later, I could hear her voice in the background. "Give me the phone, Jake," she said, sounding calm but distant. "Jack, I didn't expect this call tonight. What are you doing in Jake's room? Emily, why didn't you respond to my messages?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "What do you want me to say, Jack?" she snapped back. I felt my stomach twist. "Are you and Jake having an affair?" There was a long pause before she finally spoke. "You think I'm having an affair, Jack? You think this is what it's about?" She then told Jake to leave, and I could hear the quiet tension on the other end. After a long silence, Emily spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Jack, I've been a good wife and I've been a good mother. I'll be home in 6 weeks and we can talk then. But right now I just need this. I need it just once. Her words hit me like a slap. I couldn't hide my bitterness. You couldn't even talk to me before you left. But maybe I would have asked you to stay. Maybe I would have stayed too. My voice softened with a bitter edge. But I needed this, Jack. Just once to feel alive. Jake is just a distraction. Nothing more. The words hung in the air, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How convenient, I muttered under my breath. Just then, I heard a knock at the door. I have to go, Emily, I said, forcing the words out. I love you, Jack. I love you too, Emily, I replied, but the words felt hollow. But I'm not sure I'm still in love with you. With that, I ended the call. When I opened the door, there stood Olivia, smiling at me with a strange kind of warmth. Evening, Jack, she said, her smile knowing. Olivia, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked stunning, almost out of place in my chaotic world. Are you going to let me in? Sure, I said, stepping aside. She handed me a bottle of red Moscato. My favorite, something Emily must have mentioned. I thought you might need some company, Olivia said. I'm not sure how good company I'll be, I replied. But I do have a few questions. Ask away, she replied, already looking for wine glasses. I poured the wine, trying to steady my thoughts. Where's Howard? I asked, finally breaking the silence. He's out, playing cards, Olivia answered easily. With friends, I see, I murmured, thinking about how many nights I had left Emily alone while I was away. Emily's in South America, right? Olivia asked, watching me closely. Have you heard from her? I replied, trying to gauge her reaction. Funny you ask, Olivia said, a small smile tugging at her lips. I was just talking to her when you knocked. Oh, I'm sorry, Jack. Did I interrupt? She asked, her voice tinged with concern. No, I replied, my voice hollow. We said what needed to be said. I could tell she knew I wasn't in the best mood. Olivia, we need to talk, I said, locking eyes with her. The words felt heavy between us. Olivia's lips pressed into a thin line, and after a beat, she nodded. Let's sit down, she said, gesturing toward the living room. She sat a bit farther from me than I expected, crossing her legs with a casual air. So, how much has Emily told you? Olivia asked, turning the question back on me. I had hoped she talked to you before she left. Did she? I asked. No, she replied, then paused. I ended up playing phone tag with her, only to find out she's in South America with her doctor boyfriend. Then she told me to talk to you. So, let's cut to the chase. What did you and Emily plan before she left? Olivia took a deep breath, drinking more wine before answering. Emily and I ran into each other at the mall a while ago. We ended up having drinks at my place. I don't know where you and Howard were, but we talked. I opened up about my marriage, about my husband's preferences, she said, pausing. I waited, sensing she was deciding how much to reveal. My husband likes to share me, she finally admitted, her voice low. Share you? I asked, the pieces of the puzzle clicking together. Yes, Olivia confirmed, looking directly at me. I told Emily because I wanted her to know. I was hoping she might allow me to pursue you. I was stunned. How did Emily take that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. At first, she was shocked, Olivia said. But she listened quietly as I explained. Later, she agreed, with the condition that it happens while she's out of the country. I scoffed in disbelief. So, Emily never talked to me about this? No, Olivia replied, looking surprised by the question. She told me about it tonight, just as you were coming over. I found out about her and Dr. Max tonight, I admitted, my voice raw. Olivia shook her head slowly. My husband and I have an open marriage, but we never go behind each other's backs. So Howard knows you're here? She asked. Yes, Olivia confirmed. He knows I'm attracted to you, and he has no problem with it. Have you had other steady partners? She asked, curious. Just one, off and on for 2 years, I replied, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. We mostly meet men from out of town for adventures, and Howard watches, she added nonchalantly. Yes, it's safer that way, Olivia said with a shrug. I shook my head, utterly stunned. How long have you two been doing this? For years, she said, almost as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Emily agreed to this arrangement. Yes, but only while she's away, Olivia clarified. Did she say anything about what she'd be doing while she's gone? No, Olivia admitted. But I had a feeling she might be doing something similar. Maybe even giving me permission to be with you. I let out a frustrated sigh. I wish she had talked to me about it, I muttered, the weight of it all crashing down on me. Olivia handed me a letter. Emily left this for you before we do anything, she said, heading toward the restroom. The envelope simply read, Jack. I sat there for a moment, staring at the letter in my hands. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself before I opened it. Dear Jack, by now you probably already know that I'm breaking our vows with Jake. But before you judge me, remember that when I was with Nate in the Middle East, I have no proof, but I'm almost sure you slept with her. I've been paying attention. When I helped you with your Army intelligence courses, I learned how to read people, and I noticed the way you looked away whenever I brought her up. You're not a good liar, Jack. When Jake first touched me, I didn't tell you about it. Maybe I should have, just like I should have had affairs during the long stretches you were away, playing soldier. The temptation was always there, especially when you were in Korea, but I stayed true to you. Ava visited me while you were in the Middle East. Her smug attitude confirmed what I had already suspected. I'm almost sure you were unfaithful. If I'm wrong, then I'm the first to cheat, but somehow I doubt it. So here's the deal. While I'm gone, I'm not your wife, and you're not my husband. We both have a 6-week hall pass. If we still love each other when I get back, maybe we can move forward. If not, we'll mourn what we had. This is my choice, Jack. I'm doing this of my own free will. I don't love Jake, but I do find him attractive. He'll just be a memory once I return. If you still want me, if you really love me, then set me free. I'll be back in 6 weeks. Meet me at the Ambassador Hotel near the airport if you want to try again. If not, don't bother showing up. Just walk away. Love always, Emily. P.S. Olivia was supposed to get tested for STDs before tonight. Make sure she shows you the results. Jake and I were tested before we left, and I'll get tested again before I return. If we're going to make this work, this will be our first step toward trust. The words blurred on the page as I absorbed what I just read. I felt a pit in my stomach, my mind racing with questions. I glanced up from the letter, and there was Olivia, standing at the kitchen island, topping off her glass of wine. Are you okay? She asked, her voice low and concerned. I will be, I said, my tone flat. She nodded, silently returning to her seat and refilling my glass. This time, she sat closer, her eyes locked on me. So Jack, what now? She asked, her voice holding a mix of curiosity and expectation. Right now, nothing, I replied, my voice firm. You and Emily have been planning this for 2 weeks, and I'm just now hearing about it. Sounds like she's been up to something for a while. Am I right? Olivia didn't meet my eyes. She stared down at the wine in her glass, admitting softly, I guess so. There was a pause before she added, if I were single, things might be different. But I don't like being played, especially by someone I've loved for most of my life. You said this was her way of easing her guilt, I continued, trying to piece things together. But it's clear this whole thing was planned behind my back. She even told you what wine to bring. I don't appreciate being used like that, I muttered, anger creeping in. I get it, Olivia said quietly, her voice carrying a hint of regret. So I guess nothing's happening between us. Not tonight. I didn't respond immediately, taking a moment to collect my thoughts. I need time to think before I make any decisions. So, can we count on you for dinner in a day or two? Olivia asked, her voice soft but hopeful. I don't know, I answered, unsure. I need to sort things out. We'll see. She nodded, her expression understanding. Okay, just know I'm here for you. Thanks, Olivia. I said, my voice distant. Good night, and thanks for the wine. She stood up, taking the cue to leave. I couldn't help but watch her as she walked out the door, her figure leaving me with more questions than answers. After she left, I found myself holding Emily's letter again, rereading it. It was amazing what you could notice when you took your time to analyze something. The venom in Emily's tone when she spoke of Ava stood out, even though she wasn't certain we had slept together. Yet just a few paragraphs later, she practically gave me permission to sleep with Olivia. It didn't add up. Yes, Ava and I had gotten close in the Middle East, but we never crossed that line. It happened once, after an ambush, but it wasn't planned. It wasn't anything like Emily's affair with Jake or the setup with Olivia. At the time, I felt guilty, but I also suspected Emily had been unfaithful, so it seemed like twisted justice. But why didn't Emily want me to meet her at the airport? Was she afraid I'd be angry? I'd never given her any reason to think I'd become violent. Why the hotel instead of coming home? Then it hit me. Was she really this calculating? Had she plotted all of this right under my nose? The answer seemed clear, but the question remained, what was really going on? I scanned the room, my eyes moving over every corner. Could there be a camera hidden somewhere? Maybe in the smoke detector? I didn't trust anything. I decided to make a few calls, but not here, just in case I was being monitored. I grabbed Emily's itinerary and stepped outside to the porch, sitting on the swing chair. Emily knows I'm a consultant, but what she doesn't know is that I'm actually the senior security consultant for Acme Global, responsible for the safety of all our offices worldwide. I had the resources to get answers. My first call was to Simon Lewis, the best tech guy in my department. Lewis Simon, this is Jack. How's it going? I said when he picked up. Pretty good, boss, Simon replied, his voice light. But I'm guessing you didn't call just to chat. No, I didn't, I admitted. I need your expertise. I gave him the rundown of everything that had been going on. I'm sorry to hear that, Jack, Simon said with real sympathy in his voice. Give me 45 minutes to grab my gear, and I'll be over. Thanks, Simon. I appreciate it, I said before hanging up. Next, I scrolled through my contacts and made another call. Hola, Senor Jack, came the cheerful voice on the other end. Victor, how are you, my friend? I asked, warming to the familiar sound of his voice. Victor Silva was my go-to guy in South America. He was based in Bogota, the same city where Emily and Jake were supposed to be. I trusted Victor with my life. Doing well here, boss, Victor said when he answered the phone. Didn't expect your call today. What's going on? I filled him in on everything that had happened, giving him the same rundown I had given Simon earlier. Damn, Victor replied, sounding genuinely sorry. That's a hell of a situation. You need eyes and ears on the ground, right? Exactly, I said, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. All right, I've got all the hotel details, room numbers, and the manager's name. You want me to handle it? Can you do it? Absolutely. You want audio, video, and photos? Victor asked, already thinking through the logistics. Yes, all of it. And make sure to send me daily updates. If you need extra funds, just let me know. I got you, Jack. I'll get started and keep you posted, he said. Before hanging up, I quickly emailed him Emily's itinerary, providing the necessary information. Not long after, Simon arrived with his gear. He got to work immediately, and within 30 minutes, he found several hidden wireless cameras in various rooms. Most were tucked inside smoke detectors, and there were microphones scattered around. Our landline had also been bugged. These don't have much range, Simon commented, eyeing the devices. There's probably a receiver nearby. We searched the house and found a box stashed in the attic. It contained a laptop that was locked, but Simon was quick to deduce that it was used to store and upload data from the cameras and microphones. On the screen, we found that the gear was from Smith Investigations, and, conveniently, an address and phone number were listed. What do you want me to do with this? Simon asked, holding up the equipment. I paused for a moment, considering. Disable the camera and mic in my office, but leave everything else. Let them watch. I'll make it boring. Simon chuckled as he dismantled the devices from my office. He then went over the computer Emily and I shared and found a keylogger and spyware installed. He swiftly removed both. "Why do you think she did all this?" Simon asked, leaning back in his chair. "Probably setting me up for something. Maybe a divorce," I replied, already suspecting as much. "You're probably right," Simon said, his expression serious. "Got one more suggestion for you," he added, looking thoughtful. "If the investigator set all this up, he might still have a key. You should change the locks and security codes." "That's a good idea," I said. "I'll call a locksmith right away." "All right, take care of it," Simon said, standing up. "I'll catch you later." I thanked him for everything, and once he left, I immediately called a locksmith to change the locks and reset the security codes. Didn't want any uninvited guests. As I waited for the locksmith, I logged into Emily's account on the shared computer. Her email was already open. Her credentials were saved, and she hadn't updated them, despite me suggesting she should. I didn't normally pry, but the situation was different now. I sifted through her emails, finding several exchanges with Jake, the doctor she was involved with in Bogota. Instead of reading them all at once, I exported the entire thread to a thumb drive for later review. Among the emails, I also found messages with our kids, but nothing particularly noteworthy. When the locksmith arrived, I showed him the doors that needed new locks. As he worked, I returned to the computer. One email thread caught my eye, with the subject line "lawyer." In it, Emily told Jake she'd spoken with her lawyer, reviewed the proposed divorce settlement, and decided to proceed despite the lawyer's advice. Jake seemed taken aback, questioning her decision since she'd claimed to love me and wanted to stay with me. Emily's response sent chills down my spine. She planned to stay with me, but on her terms. She called me a cuck for years, detailing her plan to give me divorce papers at the Ambassador Hotel when she returned and pressure me into signing a postnuptial agreement. If I refused, she'd use evidence of my affair with Olivia to destroy me financially. She even mentioned suing Olivia for alienation of affection, tightening her control over everything. Jake expressed concern about the risks Emily was taking, but she seemed confident she had it all figured out. She even admitted to cheating on me for years, starting when I was stationed in Korea. I printed the thread out for safekeeping, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. By the time the locksmith finished, I paid him, including a tip for his after-hours service. Afterward, I went out for a burger and a beer, hoping the food would calm my nerves. As I pulled into the parking lot of Yan's Bar and Grill, I noticed a dark SUV following me. I tried to shake it off, but it stayed on my tail. Frustrated, I pulled in and got out, walking straight to the SUV. I yanked the door open, startling the driver. "Who the hell are you, and why are you following me?" I demanded, my patience running thin. The driver stammered, I don't know what you're talking about." "Cut the crap," I snapped. "You've been tailing me since I left my house. Are you the PI my wife hired?" "I don't know what you mean," he replied nervously. "You're lying," I said, glaring at him. "I'm done with liars. Maybe I should teach you a lesson. What do you think?" "Please don't hit me. I'll leave," he pleaded. "Don't ever let me see you near me again," I warned, my voice low but threatening. "I got it. I'm sorry," he muttered before driving off in a hurry. Shaking my head, I went inside, ordered my burger and beer, and sat at the bar. The bartender must have sensed I was in a bad mood. "Reading my mood?" he asked, offering a wry smile. "Yeah, you could say that," I replied with a half smile. "Can't live with them, can't shoot 'em," he joked, which actually made me laugh. I finished my meal, grabbed a beer to go, and headed home. I sat outside with a cigar, letting the smoke settle my nerves. A plan was starting to take shape in my mind. I checked Google, scrolled through my calendar, and picked a date. I'd need to make a few calls to set everything in motion. Just then, I got a text from Victor. "All set. First update in the morning. Please send $250 for expenses." I quickly sent the money via PayPal and typed, "Thanks, talk tomorrow." Finishing my beer and cigar, I headed upstairs. Curiosity got the best of me, and I opened Emily's nightstand drawer. Inside, I found her rings, I took off my wedding ring and placed it next to hers. Then I glanced up at the camera, which I knew was hidden in the smoke detector, and flipped it off. The next morning, I checked Emily's email and found a new message titled, "Bin." The email outlined how I had discovered the surveillance equipment and the investigator following me. I marked it as unread and logged out. Later that day, after work, I went through the footage Victor had sent me. It wasn't exactly thrilling, but I noted one line that Emily had said to Jake. "He's probably with that girl next door. I'll have video of it tomorrow for my lawyer." I stopped the video and immediately called Victor. "Senior Jack, thanks for the money. Did you see the footage?" "I did," Victor responded. "Listen, I've got a plan I want to run by you," I said, diving into the details. I laid out my idea for him, and after a moment of thought, he agreed it was doable within 10 days. "Why 10 days?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "That's our 25th wedding anniversary. I want to make sure she never forgets it," I said, my voice steely with resolve. "You're one tough hombre, Jack." He laughed, a lightheartedness breaking through. After hanging up, I scrolled through my contacts, finally stopping at a name I hadn't reached out to in years. Dear Nate. She and I had crossed paths back in the Middle East, and I hadn't spoken to her since. I dialed the number, and to my surprise, she picked up. "Jack Miller? It's been forever," she exclaimed, a familiar warmth in her voice. I quickly filled her in on the situation, and she listened in silence, processing everything. When I read her Emily's letter, her response was immediate and fiery. "You're lying, which I never said anything like that," she snapped. "We were just a team, Jack, watching each other's backs." Her tone softened slightly. "Thanks for telling me, but none of it justifies what Emily's doing now." I hesitated, then replied, "Jack, you have nothing to apologize for. We were under a lot of pressure back then, and I don't regret it." "So what's your next move?" she asked, a touch of concern in her voice. I laid out my plan, watching for her reaction. After a pause, she responded with enthusiasm. "I like it. I really like it. I've got someone in Colombia handling part of it, but there's still some ground I can cover. I think I can help with that," she offered, already on board. "When do you want this done?" I asked, feeling the weight of it all. "In 10 days, she replied. "Your 25th anniversary sounds like the perfect time." "Well, you're wicked." I laughed, the tension easing a bit. "Consider it my anniversary gift to you." We shared a light laugh before she added more seriously, "You know, I've thought about you a lot since the war in the Middle East." "I've thought about you too," I admitted, the honesty catching me off guard. "We made a great team, and I haven't connected with anyone like that since." Her voice softened, tinged with a hint of sadness. "I'm sorry to hear that. That's life, I guess," I said, trying to push past the ache in my chest. She sighed. "I've been thinking about retiring. They've got me pushing papers now. If you retire, I know a place that would hire you." "Would I be working with a certain retired Army colonel?" I asked, a playful smile tugging at my lips. "Definitely," she said, her voice light again. "Well, that's something to look forward to," she replied, before asking more seriously, "Jack, do you think we could reconnect?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Emily's made her choices. I'm not going back to her." "Good," she said, a relieved breath escaping her. "Because I'd like to finish what we started in the Middle East." "I'd like that too," I agreed, a rush of anticipation running through me. "But first, I need to handle a few things." "I understand," she said. "Just don't make me wait too long." "I won't."
I promise, I replid.
She paused, then added, "This divorce will take some time though." "I get it," I said. "Just know I'm here if you need someone to talk to." "It's great hearing your voice again," I told her, feeling something stir inside me. "Sincerely yours too," she replied warmly. "But my dinner's getting cold, so I'll talk to you soon." "Promise," I teased. "You'd better," she joked back, and the call ended on a light note. After hanging up, I felt better than I had in a long time. Dear Nate still cared, and that meant more than I expected. But reality quickly snapped me back into focus when I heard a knock at the back door. It was Olivia, holding a plate of lasagna. "I thought you might be hungry," she said with a small, nervous smile. "Mind if I come in?" she asked, glancing at me. "Sure, just put it on the counter," I said, not wanting to be rude. She set the plate down, her smile genuine. "I hope you like it, or I can make something else if you'd prefer." I was tempted, but my recent conversation with Dear Nate had reminded me of what truly mattered. "As tempting as that sounds," I said, "I'll have to pass." Olivia's smile faded, replaced by concern. "What's wrong? Emily gave you a hall pass." "I do find you attractive," I said, my voice steady. "But Emily's got a camera right there." I pointed to the smoke detector above us. "Why don't you wave hello?" Her eyes followed my gesture, and she froze, staring at the detector in shock. "Are you serious?" "Yeah," I confirmed, my tone serious. "She installed cameras all over the house and even hired a private investigator. Maybe he's watching you too." Olivia shook her head in disbelief. "I had no idea." "Come to my office," I suggested, leading the way. Once we were inside, I handed her a printout of the emails between Emily and Jake. Her eyes widened as she read through them. "Oh my God! I didn't know," Olivia said softly. "Jack, I swear, I believe you. She played us both," I said, feeling the sting of betrayal. "What are you going to do?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "I'm filing for divorce, and I'm not going to be with anyone until it's finalized," I replied, my resolve firm. "Can we still be friends?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "Of course," I said, "but nothing more." "Okay, Jack," she sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I'm sorry about everything. Enjoy the lasagna." "Thanks, Olivia," I said, walking her to the back door. She smiled at me, looking good in her shorts, but I wasn't about to risk everything. After she left, I changed into my running gear, deciding a run would help clear my mind. The lasagna could wait. When I returned, I showered and finally dug into the lasagna. It was loaded with cheese, mushrooms, and meat, just the way I liked it. It hit the spot. After I finished, I cleaned up, grabbed a beer, and headed to my office, making sure to flip off the camera in the front room before I settled in. I logged into Emily's email, hoping to find something useful. She had responded to the investigator, telling him to hold off for now. There weren't any other notable emails. Then I checked our finances. We had 3 accounts, one for each of us and a shared household account. It was clear Emily had been squirreling away some money, but what really caught my attention was a hefty retainer payment to attorney Chloe Bennett and a significant sum sent to Smith Investigations. A few charges from Luxe Couture also stood out, definitely not items I'd ever seen her wear. Curious about Bennett, I quickly searched her name and found out she was a family law attorney who had stirred up quite a bit of controversy, especially with her book promoting a particular lifestyle, one that included female-led marriages and the hot wife and cuck dynamic. I bought the cheapest Kindle version and took it out to the patio, settling down with a beer and cigar. After skimming through the book, it was clear that Bennett had a strong dislike for men. I couldn't believe Emily had chosen her as an attorney. It spoke volumes about where her head was at. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Victor. "I can arrange what you need, but it will cost $1,000. Without hesitation, I decided to transfer the money from Emily's account, making sure any trace would point directly back to her. I texted Victor to confirm once the transfer was complete. The next few days passed in a blur. My routine became monotonous. Checking for updates from Victor, reading Emily's emails, going to work, running, eating, and unwinding with a beer, cigar, and TV before bed. I didn't care that Emily never called or texted. The silence felt almost peaceful. Whatever love I had for her was gone. I saw Olivia once after showing her the emails. When I returned the lasagna plate, Vince invited me to dinner, but I declined, saying I had things to do. He seemed disappointed, but I was relieved Olivia stayed away. I didn't need that distraction. The highlight of my days became talking to Ava. We spoke every few days, catching up on life, dreams, pets, and even my kids. The more we talked, the closer I felt to her, and soon enough, I realized I was falling for her. Eventually, I set up a meeting with Chloe Bennett. Her receptionist greeted me with coffee, and I shook hands with Chloe as I introduced myself. She looked about my age, well-dressed, and in decent shape. When I noticed the ring on her finger, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of life her husband led. "So, you're considering a divorce?" Chloe asked, getting straight to the point. "Yes, I am," I replied. "And your name is Miller?" She nodded, confirming, "That's right." She frowned slightly while checking her computer. "What's your wife's name?" "Emily. Short for Emily," I responded. Chloe's fingers paused over the keyboard. "Mr. Miller, I can't represent you. There's a conflict of interest. I'm already representing your wife." I had expected this. I figured. "And I also know you only represent women. Seems a bit sexist to me," I said, my tone flat. She stared at me, clearly taken aback. "If you knew that, why did you come here?" "As a retired Army intelligence officer, I like to understand my enemy," I replied coolly. "Enemy?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "Is that how you see me?" "Pretty much," I said. "I read your book. In your New York Times interview, you recruit your clients into your lifestyle, don't you? Is that what you did with my wife?" She flinched slightly. "That's privileged information," she said, her tone sharp. "Of course," I nodded. "Did you know Emily was planning to go to Columbia again? And what she was planning to do there?" "That's privileged information," she said firmly, her voice barely containing irritation. I leaned forward. "I noticed you're married. Your book's chapter on controlling husbands caught my attention. Do you treat your husband the way you suggest, humiliating and controlling him?" "That's none of your concern, Mr. Miller," she said, standing up. "I think this meeting is over." I smiled and stood. "I'd like to say it was a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Bennett, but that would be a lie. I'm sure we'll meet again." "Good day," she replied curtly. As I walked out, I couldn't help but notice the receptionist smiling knowingly. She might have overheard our conversation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she found it amusing. Finally, the day of our 25th anniversary arrived. I took the day off knowing it would be eventful. Early that morning, Ava texted me to confirm she had done everything I'd asked. Later, I received a message from Victor. "Check your email." I opened the video he sent. It showed a dirt road with a makeshift checkpoint. 3 SUVs approached, and armed soldiers stopped them. They searched the vehicles and found something significant, which led to more soldiers arriving. Jake and Emily were pulled from their SUV, handcuffed, and taken away. A tow truck hauled the SUV off, and the other vehicles were waved through without incident. I was stunned. Without wasting any time, I called Victor. "I saw the video," I said, my voice tight with disbelief. "Yeah, we planted the stuff as planned, just a small amount," Victor said. "But Jake was smuggling larger quantities of white powder and flea powder. My men saw the pills being loaded and backed off to avoid cartel involvement." "Good call," I said, trying to steady myself. "Where are Emily and Jake now?" "They're both in jail. Emily might have known about the pills, but it's unclear how much she knew. They have 48 hours to present the case to a judge, but it could take up to 90 days for the investigation. Though I don't think it'll take that long. The consulate knows by now they should be on top of it." "Thanks, Victor," I said, hanging up. The weight of the situation finally hit me. Emily was involved in trafficking, and it seemed like she was going to get what she deserved. I quickly reached out to Ava to fill her in. She wasn't surprised and offered to contact her connections in Colombia to gather more information. "I'll keep you posted as soon as I hear anything," she assured me. While I waited, I gathered a trash bag and went through the house, removing all the cameras and microphones that Emily's PI had installed. I grabbed the receiver and the laptop from the attic, tossed everything into the bag, and set it out on the driveway. Then I called Smith Investigations. "Smith Investigations," a woman answered. "I want to speak to the head honcho." I demanded. Okay, sir, one moment, she stammered. A few seconds later, I heard the voice of the man I had confronted at Yan's. James Smith, how can I help you? This is Jack Miller. Remember me? I said, my voice low and firm. Your client is now in a Colombian jail on pill trafficking charges. I've removed all your gear from my house. It's in a trash bag in my driveway. If it's still there tomorrow, it's going in the garbage, I said, hanging up before he could say another word. I noticed the receptionist smiling as I left, possibly overhearing the conversation. As I walked out, I felt like I was finally taking control. The next morning, I noticed that the trash bag was gone. I assumed Smith had picked it up, but frankly, I didn't care. Soon after, my phone buzzed. It was Ava. I just spoke with the station chief in Bogota, she said. Let's get straight to the point. What did you find out? I replied, the Colombian authorities have been watching Jake since he arrived. He's connected to a major pill cartel. If Emily's involved, she could be facing a long prison sentence. The judge on the case is notorious for being tough on foreigners. How much time could she get? Ava asked, concern in her voice. At least 10 years, I answered, feeling the weight of the situation sink in. Well, if she's guilty, she deserves it, she said bluntly. How much were they caught with? I asked, needing to know more. About 20 pounds of white powder and flea powder, she informed me. Damn, I muttered, processing the severity of it all. Expect a visit from the State Department soon. Let me know how it goes, Ava warned. I will. Thanks, I said, ending the call. I immediately contacted the hotel in Bogota. When Carlos answered, I asked to be connected to Sophia Washington's room. Her voice was shaky when she picked up. Sophia, it's Jack Miller. Do you know where Emily is? I asked, trying to stay calm. It's our anniversary, and I wanted to reach her, I continued. Is she out with Jake? No, Jack. She's not, Sophia replied nervously, her voice trembling. Emily and Jake were arrested at a checkpoint for pill trafficking. The soldiers took them away. We were questioned and told to stay at the hotel. It's like house arrest. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. Have you told Luke? I asked, keeping my tone steady. No, Sophia admitted quietly. I'm going to talk to him soon, I said, keeping my voice firm. Sophia hesitated before pleading. Please, Jack, don't tell him. It'll destroy him. Not as much as your cheating will. I shot back, feeling the anger surge. He deserves to know, I said, more calmly this time. I ended the call and immediately called Luke, explaining everything to him and offering to send him video evidence of Sophia's affair. Thanks for telling me, Jack, Luke said, his voice hardening. This will be the last time she cheats on me. I sent him the videos, then called a divorce lawyer to schedule an appointment in 3 days. A couple of days later, my supervisor, George Harris, called me into his office. There was a man from the State Department waiting for me. Jack, your wife Emily has been arrested in Colombia for pill trafficking. Daniel Richards, the State Department agent, said gravely. We can monitor her situation, but we can't interfere with local laws. She's also been placed on a no-fly list, so even if released, she can't return to the U.S. How much prison time is she facing? I asked, my voice tight. Up to 12 years, Daniel replied. She could be eligible for conditional release after 7 or 8 years, but she won't be able to leave Colombia. He handed me a pamphlet on how to send her money for legal fees and offered to help arrange visitation. I'll consider it and be in touch, I said, my mind spinning. Once Daniel left, George closed the door and said, Jack, this could affect your security clearance and your job. Take some time off and get this under control. I will, George. Thanks, I said, nodding. Back home, I started digging through Emily's emails for anything else I could find. I stumbled upon an exchange from 3 months before their trip. Jake had asked if Emily wanted to make extra money in Colombia, and after some hesitation, she agreed. Good girl, Jake had replied. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. I printed out the email chain, saved it as a PDF, and added it to a thumb drive with the other incriminating emails I had gathered. I also reviewed the videos, skipping the physical moments, but one conversation caught my attention. It took place the day before their arrest. I noted the timestamp. "Are you ready? Tomorrow's the big day," Jake asked. "I think so," Emily replied nervously. "Good. The product will be in our vehicle tomorrow morning, in boxes marked as medicine. We won't even have to touch it, and you're sure we won't get caught?" Emily asked. "I've been on that road many times.
No checkpoints.
If this works, we can do it again and retire with the money." "Sounds good to me," she said. Bingo! I saved the video to my thumb drive, feeling a sense of finality as I gathered everything. I then emailed the kids to arrange a Skype call for the next evening and called Victor to update him. "Damn, what's your plan?" he asked when I told him everything. "I'm going through the rest of the evidence I have. I have a lawyer appointment tomorrow, and I plan to deliver the divorce papers myself." "You coming?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Here?" he asked, sounding surprised. "Yes, and I'll hand the evidence to the prosecutor too," I said. "You can stay with me and my family." "Thanks, Victor. I'm looking forward to Lupe's cooking," I joked, making him laugh. "I'll call when I'm ready to fly down." After hanging up, I arranged to send money to Emily via Western Union, draining her account. Then, I packed her belongings into trash bags, including our wedding album, and stuffed them into her car. I called her parents to inform them about the divorce and her legal troubles. They were shocked and heartbroken but agreed to pick up her things. They couldn't believe the charges. "Are you sure Emily's involved in pills?" her father asked, still in disbelief. "Yes, I have the evidence which I'll give to the prosecutor," I confirmed. They arrived later, took her car and belongings, and expressed their sadness over the whole situation. "Please stay in touch, Jack," her mother said as she hugged me. "I will," I promised. After they left, exhausted, I grabbed a beer and a cigar and sat on the porch. My phone rang. It was Ava. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked, her voice warm and comforting. "I've been better, but your call is lifting my spirits," I said with a genuine smile. We talked for a while and I shared my idea with her. After a moment of silence, she responded, "That's the best idea I've heard in a long time. Let's do it." We ended the call on a high note, and I felt much better. The next day, I met with my attorney, Megan Parker. She was confident and professional, unlike Emily's lawyer. I gave her the evidence I had and explained Emily's situation in Colombia. "That should make things easier for us," Megan said, nodding as she reviewed the files. "We're in a strong position. What do you want out of this?" Megan asked, her eyes locked on mine. "Everything except her 401k, clothes, and car. I've already sent most of her money for her expenses," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's doable," Megan said, nodding. "How do you plan to serve her?" "I'll deliver the papers myself," I answered without hesitation. "Okay, I'll have them ready in 2 days," she confirmed. We briefly discussed the possibility of going after Jake or her lawyer, but Megan advised against it. "Cases like that rarely succeed," she warned. I agreed with her advice and left after paying the retainer. Later that evening, I Skyped with the kids, knowing it was time to break the news. "What's up, Dad?" Ryan asked, his face lighting up on the screen. "I have some news. Your mother and I are getting divorced," I said, watching their reactions carefully. Both kids were shocked into silence. "Why, Dad?" Ryan finally asked, his voice laced with confusion. "Did you do something?" Julia asked, her tone a little more defensive. I gave them a brief, factual explanation and told them about Emily's arrest in Colombia for pill trafficking. "Are you sure she's involved?" Julia asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes, I have evidence that I'll be giving to the prosecutor," I explained. "You're helping put her in prison?" Ryan asked, his tone filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. "She broke the law, son," I said, my voice steady but firm. "We've talked about the dangers of pills before." "I know," Ryan said quietly. "It's just so screwed up." "Yeah, son, I replied. But your mom made her choices, and she got caught. We talked for a little longer and I answered all their questions. It was a difficult conversation, but by the end, they understood why I had to proceed the way I did. I promised to send them the address where they could write to Emily, and we ended the call with a tearful goodbye. Afterward, I called Tom to arrange a visitation for the day after I received the divorce papers. He agreed to set it up and we ended the call. Then, I updated Victor on my plans. Do you know who's prosecuting the case? I asked. Yes, Oscar Garcia. He's tough, Victor replied, his voice filled with a mix of respect and caution. Good. I'll bring him some evidence when I arrive, I said, already preparing myself for what was next. We ended the call and my last one was to Ava. I filled her in on everything, and by the time we finished, I felt much better. 2 days later, Megan called to let me know that the papers were filed and ready for Emily's signature. With my bags packed and my tickets ready, I grabbed my passport, picked up the papers, and headed for the airport. After letting Victor know I was en route, I received a message from Tom confirming the visitation setup. Victor met me after I cleared customs, and we gathered my luggage before heading out. Where to first? He asked. To see Senor Garcia, I replied. At the government building, he said, pulling into traffic. Victor parked, and I headed inside to Garcia's office. A receptionist stopped me at the door, but before I could say much, a well-dressed man appeared. I'm Senor Garcia, he said, extending his hand. And you are Jack Miller? I shook his hand. I believe you're handling the case against my wife, Emily. Garcia motioned for me to follow him into his office, where he asked, What information do you have for me? I handed him a thumb drive. This contains video of her and Jake discussing moving pills, along with email exchanges. I've also included her email credentials if you want to dig further. Garcia eyed me carefully, his expression unreadable. You realize it's my job to put her in jail for a long time, right? Yes, I understand, I replied, keeping my voice calm. So why are you giving me this evidence? He asked, clearly puzzled. Shouldn't you be helping her defense? I paused before responding. She was having an affair with Dr. Green, wasn't she? Yes, I admitted. I see you're seeking revenge, Garcia observed, a note of understanding in his voice.
No, y replica firmly.
I'm a retired Army intelligence officer. I can't ignore the law, even for my soon-to-be ex-wife. I'm also here to serve her divorce papers. Use the evidence as you see fit. Garcia paused, considering my words. All right, Senor Miller. I'll review your evidence. How long will you be in Bogota? I asked. Just a day or two. Enough time to serve the papers and return to the States, Garcia replied. Very well. Welcome to Bogota, he said as we shook hands. When I returned to the car, Victor asked, How did it go? You were right. Garcia is tough, I said, letting out a breath. He laughed. You have no idea. Let's head to my place. Lupe's been cooking all day. At Victor's home, I met his wife, Lupe, and their children. We enjoyed a delicious dinner, and afterward, Victor and I relaxed with cigars and a fiery drink that definitely lived up to its name. We chatted casually before turning in for the night. The next morning, Victor drove me to the prison where Emily was being held. The conditions were rough, noisy, crowded, and foul-smelling inside. We were led to a small room where Emily waited. She looked gaunt and exhausted, shackled to the table, her eyes dull and haunted. I sat across from Emily, my briefcase open on the table in front of us. I placed the divorce papers between us, watching her closely. You remember when you gave me a choice, Emily? I said, my voice calm but firm. Take you back or walk away? I chose walking away, I added, my eyes never leaving hers. Tears started to fall, her voice trembling as she whispered, I'm sorry, Jack. I never meant to hurt you. I shook my head, my voice hardening. Stop. You plotted this all out with Olivia, saw Chloe Bennett and set me up. You lied to me about everything. I came here for one thing only. Sign these papers and we're done. But I don't want a divorce, she said. a desperate plea in her voice. I stood firm. It's too late for that. You thought you could control me or ruin me, and it's not going to happen. We're finished. Sign the papers and let's be done with this. With great reluctance, Emily picked up the pen, signing the papers as the embassy official looked on. When it was over, I calmly packed the papers away in my briefcase. By the way, I said, my tone colder than before, I saw you paid in full for the Ambassador Hotel reservation. Since you won't need it, I'll be taking that off your hands. Emily's face twisted with anger. Go ahead, she muttered, looking at me with a bitter glare. And just so you know, I'm planning to invite Ava. We'll finish what we started back in the Middle East. Just once, if you don't mind.
Imets herklær, og nu Evring.
After everything you've done, don't even start with me, I said, my voice filled with finality. As far as I'm concerned, we're no longer married. Enjoy the rest of your miserable life. I stood up, walked out, and didn't look back. Her sobs followed me, but I didn't care. The finality of it all was liberating. Outside, I saw Garcia leaning against his car. He approached, shook the embassy official's hand, then turned to me. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak with Colonel Miller privately for a moment, Garcia said, his tone measured. The embassy official nodded and walked away, giving us some space. Garcia put his arm around me. Walk with me, Jack, he said quietly. I smirked, looking up at him. Colonel? Please call me Jack. I'm not a colonel anymore. Right? Garcia said, grinning. But once a military officer, always a military officer, eh? Well, you may call me Oscar, I replied with a wink. Garcia's expression grew serious. Victor speaks very highly of you. He's told me a lot of good things. You know Victor? I asked, surprised. Yes, we served together in the army, Garcia said, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. When he joined Acme Global, I became a prosecutor. I reviewed the evidence you provided. Solid. It will save my government a lot of time and effort, which is why I decided not to charge you with conspiracy. I was floored. Don't be surprised, Garcia continued. Victor told me your plan. If Emily had been caught with a small amount, she would have been fined and deported, but with no illegal purchase involved, nothing got sold. The money you sent, well, that went to charity. Widows and orphans, to be specific. They appreciate your donation. I felt a sense of relief flood through me. Your cooperation and your record convinced me not to press charges, Garcia added, but his voice turned firm. But if you ever try something like this again, I won't hesitate to take action. I understand, Oscar. Thank you, I said, still in shock. No, thank you, he replied. The information you provided will go a long way. Justice is coming for your wife and Dr. Green. I'm heading back to the States now. If you're ever back in Bogota, we should grab dinner, I suggested, offering a slight smile. I'd like that, he said. Let's make it happen. We shook hands, and Garcia gave me one last look before heading to his car. Goodbye, Jack, he called. Goodbye, Oscar. And thank you, I replied, watching him leave. I turned back to Victor's car, and he asked, how'd it go? It went as well as it could, I said, climbing into the car. Victor's expression softened. You sure you're okay? Yeah, Victor. I'm good, but I need to head to the airport, I said, adjusting my seat. As we drove, Victor apologized again for not following my orders. Don't apologize, I said firmly. You did what was right. I'm the one who should apologize for putting you in that position. You don't need to apologize, boss, he said, his tone lighter now. It's just, this whole thing has been a lot. I get it, I said, but it worked out, and that's what matters. We reached the airport and I turned to Victor. Thanks for everything. I'll keep in touch. Give my best to Lupe and the kids. Victor grinned. Take care, boss. Come back anytime for more Banda Pizza, he joked, making me laugh. Ava met me at the Ambassador Hotel later that evening, right where Emily and I were supposed to meet. We finished what we had started in the Middle East, and it was everything I needed. As we lay in bed afterward, she said, I've put in my retirement papers. I'm thinking of a career change. Really? I asked curious. What do you have in mind? Becoming a full-time wife and homemaker, she said, her smile lighting up the room. You think there's an opening? I teased. I already applied. She laughed, her eyes sparkling. And you know, I've fallen in love with you. I've fallen in love with you too, I replied, my heart full. So, shall we make it official? Even though my divorce isn't finalized yet? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Why not? I said, grinning. Will you marry me? She kissed me deeply. Yes, Jack. I love you so much. As we lay there, the weight of everything we'd been through seemed to melt away. Emily and Jake were convicted of pill trafficking and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Jake's fate was a grim one. He didn't last long in the brutal Colombian prison, falling victim to rival cartel members. Emily's life in prison wasn't much easier, but at least she was in a women's facility, where she struggled to get by. She rarely received visitors, mostly from embassy staff. The kids sent her letters but remained hesitant to reconnect. Sophia and the others were released after the trial, but Sophia's life was also turned upside down. She faced a difficult divorce and was fired from her job. As for Olivia and Vince, I lost touch with them, though I heard they continued their lifestyle. Olivia had to take a break after getting pregnant, though the paternity remained unknown. After Ava and I married, we sold our old house and bought a new one. She embraced her new role as a homemaker, and while I offered her a position at Acme, she preferred to focus on building our home, which included her cat. And honestly, I didn't mind at all.